Part 11. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan-Meng Baobao. Chapter 101. Zayukin tightened her fingers, her heart hanging in her throat. Miss, slave. Just accept it. Why is there so much nonsense? Suwan threw a box of ointment into her arms impatiently and said disgustedly, don't walk around with a red and swollen face, it's too harsh on your eyes. Xiuqin subconsciously took the ointment and saw Suwan leaving without any regret, as if her face was really an eyesore and she didn't want to look at her again. How could she be bribed? He pinched the ointment with complicated thoughts and stared at Suwan's back blankly. Xiao Tao raised her head slightly to talk to her. She didn't know what she said. Suwan's eyebrows were crescent and she rubbed Xiao Tao's head affectionately. After the eldest lady got married, her temper became better. Xiuqin's eyes showed envy, she caressed her swollen cheek, and slowly clenched her fingers into a fist. The stepwife is gentle and kind in front of outsiders. She is a little white flower who needs to be carefully cared for. Once the door is closed, she is not so good-tempered and will beat and scold them frequently. Xiuqin put the ointment that she originally wanted to throw away into her sleeve pocket. Xiao Tao turned around and caught a glimpse of the scene and pursed her lips. Miss, she is the stepwife's wife. Why did you give her the ointment? She curled her lips and said unhappily, she doesn't appreciate it at all. It's better to throw her into the river. There's a bubble in it. Mon didn't think that Suwan was so kind and gave up a box of ointment to his archenemy, so she must have some agenda. Mo Chen felt that his mistress was really kind-hearted and that his master was lucky to marry her in his previous life. Suwan smiled and said, it's a long-term goal to catch the big fish. Zayukin is someone Kinglan relies on, how can she be bribed with a box of ointment? Kinglan is not a good-tempered person, and it is common for her to beat and scold her servants. Even though Xiuqin is loyal, it is impossible to say that there is no resentment at all. Kinglan regards her as a thorn in his side and a thorn in his flesh. If he finds out that Zayukin has taken her ointment, he will definitely suspect that Zayukin has been bribed by her. Xiuqin will definitely not have a good life, and then she shows up to save people from fire and water. Xiuqin must not be grateful to her? Suwan glanced at Mon and Mo Chen and asked casually, do you know what the situation is in the capital? Does Kinglan leave the house to move reinforcements? Xiao Tao scratched her head, looking confused, she didn't know. Mon and Mo Chen's ears twitched. Mo Chen was about to tell Suwan about the situation in the capital. Mon hit him with an elbow. Mo Chen shut up in pain. Mon said expressionlessly, one piece of news costs 10 taels of silver. Suwan clicked her tongue and really thought she was from an escort agency. She took out 10 taels of silver from her pocket and threw it over. She raised her eyebrows and said, Gu Huizi is really a prodigal. Who did you invite? A piece of news is so expensive? This is the final payment for you. I won't go back. Take your money and withdraw. How can this be done? Mo Chen glared at Mon, hurriedly snatched the silver, put it in Suwan's hand, and said dryly, how can this be possible? We promised the employer that we will send you back intact. He took out a stack of information from his arms, his chest suddenly deflated, and he said earnestly, we have already prepared it, but we just didn't have time to give it to you. Suwan took the information and took a look. They were all diagrams of the relationships between people in the capital, crisscrossing like a spider web. She sat next to the 8 immortals table in the side hall, went over the relationships between the characters, and finally pointed at the words Prince Regent. The plot of the book Hegemony in my mind is very fragmented and incomplete. There are no plots for many characters, only one main line. However, this main line was almost destroyed due to the butterfly effect of her time travel. The regent single-handedly sent Su Mingxiu to the position of crown princess. Are he and Su Mingxiu in the same group? If so, things are a little tricky. After finishing dinner absent-mindedly, Suwon went to the kitchen to make medicinal meals for the old lady. The old lady gave her a jade tablet for entering the palace and sent her back to sleep. Suwon was so tired that she fell asleep on the soft and fragrant pillow. The next day, Suwon got up early. As usual, she checked the old lady's pulse and confirmed that her condition was stable and gradually getting better. She was relieved a little. After breakfast, she entered the palace with the jade plaque. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the palace, and Suwon got off the carriage. A female official in pink palace clothes came over with a gentle smile on her face. She bowed to Suwon Yingying, "Miss Su, you are finally here. Last night, Mrs. Su handed over a message to the palace. Your Majesty will stay the night. If you don't have a good night's sleep, I'll send my servant to pick you up at the palace gate at dawn." Suwon's heart moved. The queen had this concern, which showed that she cared about her. This would make it easier to get the dowry. "Auntie Lao Fang," Suwon said politely. Aunt Fang glanced at her and joked, "You are separated from this slave." "It's just that I haven't been in the palace for a long time, and I feel a little timid and a little reserved," Suwon said sadly. "It has only been more than a month. When I entered the city, it suddenly felt like a long year had passed." Aunt Fang felt pity in her heart and hinted, "My queen has been looking forward to you in her heart these days. In her heart, you are half of her daughter. If you have any pain, don't tell anyone. Just tell her." Suwon's eyes lit up. Will these words give her the final say? "It's my lack of filial piety that makes my queen worry about me." Suwon said this, but her face cleared up. Aunt Fang shook her head helplessly and led Suwon to the royal garden. The imperial garden has dense shade, a cool breeze, and tiny bits of sunshine scattered on the ground like stars in the sky. Suwon walked through the imperial garden and saw a pavilion not far away. 4 maids were standing outside. The queen was sitting in the pavilion, and 2 maids were fanning behind her. "Mother, Miss Su is here," and Fang entered the pavilion as she spoke. Suwon followed closely and saw the queen in her impression. She is now nearly 40 years old, wearing a long red dress that makes her look radiant. She sits in the middle, exuding the majesty of a superior. The moment she saw Suwon, she smiled brightly and waved, "Wan, come to me." Empress Jin and Suwon bowed before sitting next to the empress. "I've lost weight." The queen held Suwon's hand and looked at it carefully. "I have suffered a lot. They were very good to me. I didn't have to endure any hardships. It was just that there was a gap at the beginning and it was a little difficult to adapt." Suwon didn't see any sadness in her eyebrows. The glow was bright and dazzling. "I'm used to it now, but I feel that compared to there is more peace in the capital, and my life is going smoothly. I came back to Beijing this time to visit you and my grandmother, and to fulfill my wish." The queen is a transparent person, and she guessed what she meant without saying anything. "Are you here for the dowry?" "I can't hide it from you," Suwon said calmly. The smile on the queen's lips faded, and she said with a serious look, "Your dowry was carried into the East Palace as Su Mingxiu's dowry. If you want to take it away, you are dishonoring the royal family. The author has something to say." Ouch ouch, finally done. Good night babies. Okay. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 102. No matter what the name is, as long as the dowry comes to me. As long as it's not cheap for Su Mingxiu, I'm willing to cooperate. Suwon knew in her heart that the prince and the queen were separated, and the person who the prince of the Eastern Palace valued would definitely not be the queen. It is still a bit troublesome to get the dowry out quietly. To bring it back with great force and slap the royal family in the face, if the queen is willing to help, The emperor will definitely not be happy, and maybe the regent will be alerted, which will be bad. The imperial power was in power, and no matter how capable she was, it was not enough. Unless she is so powerful that even the imperial power cannot shake her. Suwon's eyes lit up and she suddenly had an idea. You can give me the dowry. The queen's eyes moved slightly and she pointed her finger on her forehead. You have a clever idea, and the reward must have a name. When I reward you, you shouldn't take the crown princess's dowry. She had something in mind. He pointed out, the crown princess is in the capital. If you do something beneficial to her, I can help you. Suwon rubbed her forehead and fell into deep thought. The queen meant that Sumixyu was in the capital. She could help Sumixyu to force Sumixyu to take out the dowry. There is one thing that needs to be done right now, that is to cure Sujihong and get the dowry back naturally. Master Weiren will return to Beijing from his travels in a few days. His medical skills are very high. You were once his apprentice. You can ask him to treat Sujihong. I will ask the prince to take out the dowry. The queen pointed out a clear path for Suwon. Suwon frowned. The queen pointed out Master Weiren at this time. Someone must have had this idea, so she was asked to get there first. You should know that he has no father-daughter affection for me. He is safe and sound. He is the supporter of Qinglin and her daughter. He might kill me for them. Suwon is unwilling to save an enemy. The matter that affects the imperial edict is not a secret. You should know that when my mother got married, my grandfather gave her an imperial edict as a dowry. Now that she has passed away, the things belong to me. How can I be willing to let them fall into Sumixyu's hands? The queen's expression suddenly changed. Suwon said with a solemn expression, the prince is ambitious. He gave up his fiancée and broke up with you for the sake of power. If this imperial edict falls into his hands, that position is basically his. The queen's heir died in infancy, so she adopted other princes and raised them under her knees in order to consolidate her power. She represents not only herself, but also her family behind her. The prince hugged the regent's thigh when the queen was pregnant. Later, the queen's heir died, and the prince could not control the regent, and was even manipulated by the regent. How could a man as ambitious as him endure becoming a puppet emperor? So when the queen lost her child, he turned back and tried to repair his relationship with the queen to compete with the regent. After all, the queen is backed by the Zhenqiu Palace, and she is Zhao Wei's cousin. The queen's mother and Zhao Wei's mother are sisters. But how could he hide what he did from the queen? The queen had already been chilled, but now she was just maintaining the superficial relationship between mother and son. The prince was walking on thin ice, so he desperately wanted the imperial edict to be with him. Once he got this thing, he would have an extra talisman. If he started to plot military power, the first one to bear the brunt would be the Zhenqiu Palace. The queen must know this truth, so her expression became solemn. She pondered for a moment and whispered, "Don't worry, I will get your things back for you." Suwon tilted her head and leaned on the queen's shoulder, and said coquettishly, "My queen, you are so kind to me." The queen lowered her eyes and looked at the head leaning on her shoulder, her expression a little dazed, her thoughts gradually drifting away. Her child loved nothing more than lying on her lap or shoulder, pestering her to beg for something coquettishly. After getting her permission, he would laugh happily and say sweetly, "Mother, you are so kind." When the prince was raised by her side, he had already reached a sensible age. He was very cautious at a young age. He was afraid of making mistakes and being rejected by her. He did his best in everything and never had such intimate interactions with her. When Suwon was a child, even though he was close to her, he would not be so coquettish. The queen felt so soft in her heart that she touched her head with her hand and said in a gentle tone, "How is the Gu family treating you?" "They are very good to me." Suwon boldly hugged the queen's arm and talked about the Gu family. Finally, she concluded, "They are like my real family." Being ordinary is a blessing. The queen likes Suwon's temperament of knowing good from bad and not being vain. If you have a chance in the future, you can bring him to show me. Okay, Suwon agreed. The queen smiled, with loving eyes. Stay and have lunch with me before going back. I want to eat donkey and roll around. This snack in the palace makes me worried. Suwon's words made the queen feel happy, and she ordered Aunt Fang to do donkey roll. Suwon finished lunch with the queen and left the palace to return home. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Dingyuan Ho mansion, and Suwon got off the carriage. Suddenly, a carriage drove over and stopped at the gate of the Ho mansion. Suwon stopped and saw a man in his early 30s getting out of the carriage. It was a strange face that Suwon didn't recognize, so she walked into the house. Miss Suluo Cheng called Suwon, stepped up the steps, handed her the 2 wooden boxes in his hands, and said in a friendly manner, "My subordinate Luo Cheng has been ordered by the regent to bring these to you. Send birthday gifts." Suwon was confused. The regent gave her a birthday gift? Suddenly, a memory came out one after another. The original owner was born on the 6th day of July, and every year the regent would prepare a gift. But for some unknown reason, the original owner just threw it in the warehouse to collect dust without ever opening it. Suwon tried hard to recall, but this area of memory was blank. This year, it was a few days earlier, so the regent's gift-giving seemed particularly abrupt. Following the trend in previous years, the regent just sent a servant to bring him and left without attracting anyone's attention. Luo Cheng delivered it in person this time. Was he trying to push her to the forefront? She put her thoughts away, took the wooden box, and imitated the tone of the original owner, "Thank the regent for me." Luo Cheng didn't mind her cold attitude at all. "I'll take my leave first." Suwon watched Luo Cheng get into the carriage and leave, then went back to her house. Sitting in the chair, she placed the wooden box on the small table and opened a box. Inside was a thin land deed. She took a closer look and couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. It turned out to be 2 shops in the capital. She opened another box, which contained the deed of a house in the capital. Suwon was surprised. Being able to send these congratulatory gifts showed that they were thoughtful. The Prince Regent's attitude towards her was a bit like a feeling of déjà vu towards a younger member of the family. But if that's the case, why did the regent help Su Mingxiu steal the original owner's marriage? She suddenly came up with a bold idea to test the regent's attitude towards her. Whether they are enemies or friends, you will know once you try them. Xiao Tao, find a piece of red paper. Yes, Xiao Tao immediately pulled out a piece of red paper. Suwon forged a dowry list and let the pen and ink dry. She made the dowry list old, making it look older. She handed it to Xiao Tao and said with a smile, "You give it to Qinglin and ask her to spit out the dowry, otherwise I will file a lawsuit." If the regent helps Su Mingxiu, her and Qinglin's fight for the dowry can just confuse the situation and make the regent take it lightly, so that the queen can attack behind her back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 103. Qinglin sat on the soft couch, leaning against the big pillow with a sad expression. When I came back from the Prince Regent's palace yesterday, I felt very uncomfortable. I lay in bed and slept until noon, looking a little haggard. Upon seeing this, Xiu Qin quickly handed the tea to Qinglin. "Madam, are you feeling unwell? Do you want to ask the doctor to check your pulse?" "No need. I didn't sleep well last night and my head is a little dizzy." Qinglin lazily took the tea and glanced sideways at Xiuqin's face from the corner of her eye. The fingerprints on her face had disappeared and she hummed from her nostrils, "Did that little bitch act like a monster in the house yesterday?" Xiuqin's eyes changed, she shook her head and said, "No. Xie Juan happened to bring lunch from outside. When she heard this, she sneered coldly, "Zayukin, you betrayer, if the eldest lady gives you a bottle of ointment, you will rebel. Don't forget, if it weren't for Madam, can you survive today?" "What's going on?" Kinglan couldn't help but sit up straight. Zayukin's face changed drastically, and she hurriedly explained, "Madam, I did not betray you, that ointment is from the eldest lady." "You dare to say that you didn't accept the ointment given by the eldest lady?" Xiaojuan interrupted Zayukin, put the lunch on the table, and took a look at Zayukin. "If you had not betrayed my wife, the eldest lady had entered the palace this morning. Why don't you say it?" "Bitch, how dare you betray me?" Kinglan's eyes flashed with anger, and she raised her hand and threw the cup at Zayukin. "Ah!" Xiuqin covered her forehead, thick blood flowing down. "Madam, I don't have it. The eldest lady gave me the ointment because she didn't like my face being an eyesore. I am loyal to you and will never have second thoughts." Xiuqin turned pale and kowtowed. A pair of eyes full of fear, tears streaming down his face. "Madam, please believe me for once, I didn't betray you, I really didn't." Kinglan didn't believe a word of it. In the past year since she had been in power, the old lady had gone to the temple. Her confidants were everywhere in the house, and any slightest disturbance would reach her ears. Fortunately, someone saw it this time. If Suwan had contacted Xiuqin privately and bribed her, she would not have known how she died. "I beat and scold you all the time, but you don't hate me in your heart." Kinglan was very suspicious, especially since Suwan was in the house. They had long been enemies. "Either you died or I died." She didn't dare to take it lightly, so Suwan, when Qin was unavailable, Kinglan would never keep her, and said coldly and ruthlessly, "Xiaojuan, go and ask Mrs. Yat." Xiaojuan was stunned for a moment, and when she received the look from Kinglan, she suddenly understood. "I'll go right now, my slave." Zayukin has been with Kinglan for 5 years, how could she not know the meaning of this look? She has done so many things for Kinglan over the years, how can she be allowed to live? On the surface, he asked the Aboza to drag her away, but he killed her halfway. Zayukin felt cold all over and wanted to beg for mercy. 2 rough women came in from outside, covered her mouth, and dragged her down. "Aha!" Xiuqin opened her eyes wide in fear, struggled and shouted, but could not make Qinglan soften her heart. After being dragged out of the yard, Zayukin met Xiaotao, who was coming over, and asked for help. Xiaotao lowered her head to get out of the way and ignored Wei Rui Pavilion's other business. Not to mention rescuing, she would even take pleasure in his misfortune. There is not a single good person in Wei Rui Pavilion, so they all help the mother and daughter deal with the eldest lady. "You deserve it," Xiaotao spat at Xiuqin. Xiuqin paused in her violent struggle, stared at Xiaotao's cheerful back, and jumped away. All the strength in her body seemed to be suddenly drained, and she gave up resistance and allowed her mother-in-law to drag her away. Suddenly, the 2 rough ladies groaned and fainted on the ground. Xiuqin fell to the ground with a plop. A pair of familiar embroidered shoes appeared in front of her. Zayukin's pupils tightened and she suddenly looked up, touching Suwan's smiling face as bright as the sun. Kinglan was so angry that half of her head throbbed, and she had no appetite at all, so she leaned back on the big pillow. "Madam, Xiaotao from the eldest lady's courtyard is here. She said she has something to ask you." The second-class maid from outside came in and announced. Kinglan's eyes showed disgust, and she said in an unpleasant tone, "No." The maid hurried out and came in again soon. Her face turned slightly pale, and she stuttered, "Husband, Madam, Xiaotao said that she came here, to ask for the dowry on the order of the eldest lady." Kinglan's face instantly turned blue. How can she have any dowry? Her mother died early, and when I entered the Marquis's mansion, I didn't see a single copper coin. "Why do you come to me to ask for dowry?" she sneered. "It's ridiculous." "Madam, you know better than anyone else where our eldest lady's dowry is. Xiao Tao barged in from outside and showed off the dowry list in her hand. This is the dowry list left by the late madam. There are 2 dowry lists in total. A copy of the list disappeared after the late wife passed away. There is also a copy that the late wife sewed into a sachet before her death. If you deny that you haven't seen the dowry, then you really haven't seen it. The eldest lady cares about the fraternal relationship and doesn't want to make an ugly scene and let others see the Ho family's joke. Xiao Tao raised her chin, quite proudly. If madam refuses to take it out, our lady will go and sue the emperor. Please send someone to the East Palace to compare the dowry of the crown princess. The reputation of the crown princess is not good. If it is rumored that she has taken away the dowry from her eldest sister, do you think she can still hold her current position? Bitch, bitch. Kinglin was so angry that her eyes were fixed on the red paper, as if she wanted to spit out fire and burn it to ashes. Don't scare me, the Chi family's dowry list has long been missing. Kinglin almost crushed her teeth and said with a distorted face, you let her file a petition. At this point, Kinglin stood up suddenly. He walked out quickly. She doesn't need to go, I will file a petition for her now. Let the emperor comment. Is there any reason for a junior to force himself on an elder? The master is still lying on the bed unconscious. She's going to kill me. Kinglin was preparing to strike first. Suwan, a bitch, went to the palace this morning to find the queen, and when she came back she was making a fuss about grabbing the dowry. She must be looking for the queen to back her up. I can only go to the emperor. Even if the queen wants to help, can she get past the emperor? When Xiao Tao saw Kinglin running out of the yard and shouting for someone to prepare the carriage, she panicked and hurried to find Suwan. This dowry list is fake, and she is threatening Kinglin by filing a complaint. If the matter is really brought to the imperial court, will it be detrimental to the eldest lady if it is revealed? Xiao Tao ran faster. Ouch! Xiao Tao bumped into a person who came out of the corner and almost fell to the ground. Someone supported her shoulders. She looked with tears in her eyes and saw Suwan standing in front of her. She said eagerly, Miss, oh no, the stepwife has gone to the palace to file a complaint. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 104. Suwan said very calmly, what are you afraid of? The soldiers will block it, and the water will cover it. She looked in the direction of the palace and curled her lips. Now it's Kinglin who brought out the dowry. She slapped the royal family in the face. I have nothing to do with it. Xiao Tao was confused and couldn't understand the meaning of Suwan's last sentence. Suwan touched her forehead and said without explaining, go and prepare the carriage. Miss Xiao Tao felt uneasy in her heart, and when she saw Suwan's confident and determined eyes, she thought she had a plan in mind. All the panic was suppressed in her heart, and she hurriedly went to ask someone to hitch the carriage, for fear of delaying Suwan's plan. Xiao Tao was young and worked quickly, and soon Suwan got on the carriage. Miss, where are you going? Xiao Tao opened the curtain and got into the carriage. Enter the palace, Suwan said casually. Stop Kinglin from filing a petition. Xiao Tao's eyes lit up, and she quickly turned around and signaled to a boy that she didn't need to ask the old lady for help. The carriage sped towards the palace. Xiao Doxin raised her voice, opened the curtains, and stared at the carriage that was about to catch up soon. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Miss, madam's carriage is in front of you. We can catch up soon. Really? Suwan raised the curtain on the other side of the car, and as expected, she could catch up with a little more effort. Xiao Tao excitedly patted the carriage wall and told the coachman, hurry up and stop madam's carriage. When Suwan saw that the carriage in front seemed to have noticed them, it suddenly accelerated and squinted her eyes. No, keep this distance. Xiao Tao was confused and didn't understand what Suwan meant. Miss, aren't we going to stop madam? Yeah, I didn't stop you. Suwan Hun didn't care. Xiao Tao looked at Suwan aggrievedly, her eyes full of resentment. Suwan didn't explain. She raised her hand and pinched Xiao Tao's face. Be good. Xiao Tao's eyes widened and her cheeks turned red instantly. Suwan took out a small porcelain bottle from her sleeve, took out a fingernail-sized amount of powder, and spread it evenly on the cuff. The carriage just stopped. Suwan jumped out of the carriage first and said to Xiao Tao, who got out of the carriage, "You stay here and wait for me to come back." With the jade tablet in hand, Suwan entered the palace unimpeded. On the other side, Kinglan has entered the palace and arrived at the Yangzin Hall. "Eunuch Li, I have something to ask you to see the emperor." "Please let me know." Kinglan took out a money bag and stuffed it into Eunuch Li's hand. Eunuch Li has a white face and no beard, holding a fly whisk in his hand. He is the eunuch who is the confidant of Emperor Jing, and the eunuch who holds the seal. He pushed the money bag back and said with a smile, "The emperor is meeting with the Taoist priest. Let's go and let him know." Kinglan burst into tears of gratitude. Eunuch Li knocked on the door and entered the Yangzin Hall. In the center of the Yangzin Hall, there is a short table and two yellow futons. Emperor Jing is sitting cross-legged on the futons. The short table lights a few incense sticks and candles. The smoke clouds obscure his expression clearly. The Taoist priest sat cross-legged opposite and placed a red elixir in front of Emperor Jing. "Your Majesty, this is the elixir that was refined this morning. It can prolong life. Every time I take the elixir, my body feels a little younger than before, my spirit is very good, and I don't feel tired as easily as before." Emperor Jing trusted the Taoist master very much and took out the elixir to eat. The emperor is the true dragon emperor, and with the blessing of God, the effect of the elixir can be maximized. The poor Taoist will step aside first, so as not to disturb the emperor's practice. The Taoist priest bowed and left. Eunuch Li and others left, and then he reported, "Your Majesty, Madame Dingyuan Marquis wants to see you." Emperor Jing looked worried. "If anything happens, ask her to find the queen or the regent." Eunuch Li watched Emperor Jing stand up. His black hair was already mixed with white hair, but he looked like he was in his 50s despite being in his 40s. The eyelids were black and the lips were dark purple, making the whole person look very gloomy. Eunuch Li lowered his eyes and spoke in a very low voice, "Your Majesty, I have something to report." The fact that the crown princess is the daughter of Dingyuan Marquis spread all over the city yesterday. Mrs. Dingyuan Marquis may have come here for this matter. A daughter from a foreign concubine. Emperor Jing looked gloomy and said very displeasedly, "The regent has never told me. He only said that Sujihong's stepdaughter's father was a scholar. If this is the case, even if this daughter has national destiny, she will pursue immortality for me. The way is beneficial, and the royal family cannot be criticized for it." Eunuch Li's eyes flashed. Emperor Jing was dissatisfied with Su Mingxiu, and now there were only two ways. One is to abolish the crown princess, or to depose Chu, the crown prince. "Do you want to see her?" Emperor Jing asked. "Where is the prince?" Eunuch Li replied, "The prince is going to Guangling Mansion." Emperor Jing pondered for a while, then flicked his sleeves and said, "Let her come in." Yes. Eunuch Li exited and said to Kinglan, "Your Majesty, please come in." Kinglan didn't dare to show off in front of Eunuch Li, so she thanked him, tidied up her appearance, and then stepped into the hall of cultivation of heart. He looked at the ground under his feet, not daring to look directly at Long Yan, and knelt on the ground and said, "Your Majesty, please make the decision for my wife. The legitimate daughter of my wife's family returned to Beijing and hated the crown prince for taking away her engagement and spreading rumors about her. She is the daughter of a concubine born to the marquis. Today, she is even slandering her to steal her dowry and make it for the crown princess. The marquis is lying on the bed with his life and death uncertain. She is a good doctor, but she refuses to treat the marquis. She forces the courtier to hand over her dowry. If she does not hand over the dowry in full, she will make a fuss known to everyone. The royal family seized her dowry. My wife has been wronged and her reputation is nothing more than that. She wants to smear the royal family. I have no choice but to come to the palace to ask you to make the decision to stop her from doing whatever she wants. Don't let the matter get out of hand just because of her anger. When Emperor Jing heard what she said, his temples swelled and hurt, and he pressed his fingers on his forehead. Su Mingxiu is Sujihong's biological daughter, and the daughter of your late husband. Kinglan quibbled, my wife did not. Emperor Jing, it is a capital crime to deceive the emperor and ignore your superiors. Kinglan's face turned pale, and tears flowed from her eyes. She didn't dare to hide or tell the truth. Liwa sobbed with tears, I and my wife had a one-night stand with the Marquis, and later the old lady used it to seduce the master. For this crime, I drove my wife out of the prince's mansion. After I returned home, my mother married me to my deceased husband. Soon after we got married, I found out that I was pregnant. My wife didn't know who the biological father of the princess was. Emperor Jing felt that Marquis Dingyuan was really confused, marrying such a despicable person and causing such a lot of trouble. But then I thought about who Marquis Dingyuan's first wife was, and decided to calm down the turmoil. Emperor Jing's brain throbbed, as if a sharp knife had cut out the nerves and the pain was excruciating. He said in a cold voice, go back, and I will put an end to the rumors outside. If she makes trouble again about the dowry, I will give you justice. Kinglan breathed a sigh of relief and was about to thank the emperor for his kindness. That's nonsense. Suwan ignored the obstruction of the chamberlain, broke into the Yangzin palace, and knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, this is a one-sided statement from my stepmother. I asked her for a dowry, but what kind of dowry? She told you the truth. Say. P.S. The palm print eunuch and the Bingbai eunuch are considered internal ministers, so they can call themselves ministers. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 105. Emperor Jing had an unbearable headache, and veins popped out on his forehead. When he saw Suwan barging in, her voice was like a knife stabbing into his head. He held the armchair tightly with both hands, and the veins on the back of his hands were hideous. Except for the first time he took the elixir, there was no pain at all. Every time he took the elixir, the pain became more and more painful. After getting over it, although his appearance looked older than before, he felt much younger in every aspect. The Taoist priest said that if you pursue the path to immortality, your appearance will change and you will be rejuvenated. This was the first time I had such an unbearable headache. I wanted to bang my head against the wall and roll on the ground to relieve the pain. His eyes were red and angry. Emperor. Eunuch Li noticed the problem and ran over to help Emperor Jing. What's wrong with you? Do you have a headache? I'm going to call the imperial doctor. Eunuch Li shouted in a high-pitched voice, come here. Go and ask the imperial doctor. Emperor Jing's face turned blue with pain and broke out in a cold sweat. I'll do it. Suwan knew that the opportunity had come, so she quickly walked over and took Emperor Jing's pulse. Eunuch Li separated her hand and said, Miss Su, the imperial doctor will be here later. Has your Majesty had the symptom before? Suwan looked solemn. Eunuch Li shook his head, it's just slight. Suwan emphasized her tone, that's right, the emperor suddenly suffered from an emergency, and when the imperial doctor comes, if something happens in the meantime, can you bear it? I cherish my life very much, and I will never take action easily if I am not sure. Eunuch Li finally compromised and asked Suwan to treat her. Suwan skillfully took Emperor Jing's pulse. His pulse was normal and nothing unusual. She stared at Emperor Jing's face and lip color, which were obviously very abnormal. The strength of his fingers was a little stronger, and his pulse was strange. Her eyes changed slightly, and she focused on her pulse. She realized that Emperor Jing was poisoned, and her heart was filled with panic. Someone actually wanted to assassinate the emperor, and they had succeeded. Who is this person? Suwon felt that she was careless. If she was not careful, she might be involved in the conspiracy. She retracted her hand and said calmly, "The emperor's eyelids are severely bruised. He probably has a headache due to lack of sleep. I will give him a few injections and it will be cured." Eunuch Li was doubtful, but he thought that the imperial physician had checked Emperor Jing's pulse several times before, and he was in good health. Ever since Emperor Jing pursued the path to immortality, he seldom slept and was very energetic, which was a bit like the symptoms Suwon mentioned. "Come here." Eunuch Li helped Emperor Jing lie down on the large dragon chair. Suwon took out the needle bag from her sleeve, took out the silver needle, and gave Emperor Jing acupuncture. While supporting his head, she turned her back to Eunuch Li and quickly stuffed a pill into Emperor Jing's mouth. Eunuch Li watched closely, and with a wink, 5 or 6 imperial guards came in. If anything went wrong, they quickly captured Suwon. Kinglin had never seen such a battle before, and her whole body was shaking like chaff. In my heart, I hoped that Suwon would be beheaded if something went wrong. Then I thought about it. Suwon was a member of the Su family, and if there was anything wrong with the emperor, the entire 9 Su family clans would be destroyed. But if it's cured, Suwon is kind to the emperor, will he favor Suwon, right? Kinglin was about to say something to interrupt Suwon's treatment. "Your Majesty, are you feeling better?" Eunuch Li asked cautiously. Emperor Jing moved his eyebrows. There was still a bitter taste left by the pills in his mouth. He shook his head and said, "It's better. My head doesn't hurt anymore." As he spoke, Emperor Jing looked directly at Suwon, staring at her young and bright face, as if he saw Chi Min's raised eyebrows were exactly the same. Emperor Jing sat up on the dragon chair with a silver needle stuck in his head. He raised his hand to pull it out and threw it on the dragon table. He asked Suwon in a cool tone, "When you came in just now, did you say that Mrs. Ding Yuan Ho framed you? You tell me, it's not the dowry she mentioned. Which dowry do you want?" Suwon calmly put away the silver needle, returned to the middle of the hall, knelt beside Kinglin and replied, "After the death of my daughter's mother, the dowry has always been in the hands of her father. After my daughter later got married, not only did her biological mother leave her, they didn't give me the dowry, not even a dowry of a copper coin. It was the great grace of the Ho family that my stepsister married into the royal family. The Ho family couldn't afford the dowry, so they gave her my biological mother's dowry, so as not to let outsiders know. The marquee mansion is shabby, but I am willing to offer it with both hands." She raised her hands to cover her face, and when she put her hands down again, her eyes were red and full of tears. She raised her head slightly and stubbornly refused to let the tears flow down. She choked with sobs and said, "My grandfather was successful in rescuing the car. The late emperor rewarded Qi with an imperial edict home, to show royal grace. I can give you everything, but I can't give this to others. I asked my stepmother for the imperial edict and asked her to return it to me. Not only did she refuse to return it to me, but she even talked nonsense." Kinglin's eyes widened, and she was very shocked. She didn't seem to think that Suwon was not asking for the dowry, but for the imperial edict. He even talks nonsense and slanders others. She denied it with an excited expression, "I didn't. Did you not return the imperial edict to me, or did you not speak nonsense? I have not reported the truth to the emperor, and you are so eager to deny it? Aren't you guilty?" Suwon was aggressive, and the corners of her slightly raised lips were sarcastic, as if to say, "You are not the only one who talks nonsense." He said word by word, "You said that the emperor pursues immortality and lets the regent take charge of the government and ignore the affairs of the court. The prince has grown up and can take charge of the affairs on his own. It is better to pass the throne to the prince and focus on cultivation, to prevent the throne from falling into the hands of others. Therefore, this imperial edict cannot be returned to me." It will be used to help the prince become a great treasure. It will be of great benefit to me in the future. I was shocked at the time. This is the empire of the G family. How could it be our turn as a woman to make the decision? But my stepmother insisted on going her own way and didn't listen to my advice at all. My daughter was afraid that the home mansion would suffer disaster because of her, so I want to tell my grandmother to stop her. Who knew she would complain first? Your Majesty, please be careful. The late emperor trusted my grandfather and gave him such a great grace. Saving the lives of his family's descendants at a critical moment can be regarded as repaying the original life-saving grace. My grandfather was fiercely loyal to the imperial court and would never do anything like this. The idea of interfering with the crown prince would go against the original intention of the late emperor, otherwise he would not be able to rest in peace while underground. Suwon put her hands on the ground and rested her forehead on the back of her hands. I am incompetent and cannot protect my mother's dowry. I beg the emperor. Take back the imperial edict, so that no one can cause harm to Chaogang. Emperor Jing was furious and stared at Kinglin. He did not expect that a woman would dare to point fingers at the position of the crown prince. He is not dead yet. Eunuch Li couldn't help but take a second look at Suwon. She told her about the imperial edict given by the late emperor to the Qi family, which was to protect the lives of the Qi family's descendants and to repay the life-saving grace. Later, she used retreat to advance and begged the emperor to take back the imperial edict. For what she said, how could the emperor take back the imperial edict? Not only did he think she understood the general idea, but he also forced her to accept the imperial edict. Sure enough, Emperor Jing said with anger, this is the grace given by the late emperor to General Qi. Naturally, only the descendants of the Qi family can use it. I cannot take back the late emperor's decision. Madam Suli, I limit you to return the imperial edict within today. The original owner, if he disobeys my instructions, he will be punished for stealing the imperial edict. P.S. Kinglin's surname is Li, and her surname is Guanfu, so she is called Suli. The author has something to say. Babies, I will update 4,000 words first, and there are still 2,000 words left. It will probably be very late, so go to bed early and watch it when you get up tomorrow morning, okay? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 106. Kinglin was confused. After Suwon cured the emperor's headache, she realized that the emperor would favor Suwon. Suwon was treasonous by spreading rumors about her, and wanted to use the Qi family's imperial edict to commit treason, which made her feel like she was falling into the cold. This bitch will do whatever it takes to achieve her goal. Emperor Jing's oral instructions were like a thunderbolt to her. Your Majesty, I'm wronged. I'm just a housewife. She lent me 10 gallbladders, but she wouldn't dare to be so rebellious. Kinglin kowtowed hard, but after a while, there was a bruise on her forehead, and she burst into tears. He said, my daughter is now the crown prince, so why bother with this? If you are not careful, you will be beheaded. That's enough. Emperor Jing listened impatiently and waved his sleeves. If I pursue you, 10 of your heads will not be enough to cut off. After you go back, return the imperial edict to Suwon. Then, Emperor Jing instructed Eunuch Li, you are here to kill me. My instructions are to go and count the dowry of the crown princess. When Qi Men got married, both the queen and I were rewarded. If it is confirmed that it is Qi Men's dowry, all of it will be returned to Suwon. Emperor Jing paused for a moment and said with a majestic look on his face, you have prepared an imperial edict under the guidance of the great scholar of the cabinet. The crown princess has poor conduct and moral deficiencies. She cannot set an example for women. I will depose the crown princess and demote her to the rank of Liang Yuan. A thunderbolt came from the blue sky. Kinglin wished she could slap herself to death, but she only wished she had not gone to the palace to complain. Now that things have happened, what else doesn't she understand? All this is Suwon's plan. Going to the capital to ruin Su Mingxiu's reputation and labeling her a concubine caused an uproar, which was bound to reach the ears of the emperor. Suwon bribed Xiu Qin again, went to the palace to ask the queen for help, and returned to the palace to ask her for a dowry. Everything stimulated her, forcing her to go to the palace to complain. Then Suwon asked for the imperial edict with a clear purpose, and slandered her. She is rebellious. This is simply the opposite of the emperor in the world. Suspiciousness is also a common problem among emperors. Regardless of whether Suwon's words are true or false, Emperor Jing will order her to hand over the imperial edict. If she refuses, it will prove Suwon's slander. But she never imagined that the emperor would depose the crown princess because of Su Mingxiu's identity and anger. After following one link after another, Suwon not only got the imperial edict as she wished, but also got her dowry back without any effort. Kinglin's heart was filled with regret and she didn't dare to say anything, just because she was afraid that Emperor Jing still had some accounts to settle. My wife obeys your orders. Kinglin looked gloomy and kowtowed with hatred. However, Suwon was not going to let it go and reminded Emperor Jing, Your Majesty, my stepmother is filing a complaint. The last three words were emphasized. The corner of Eunuch Li's mouth twitched, and he said in his heart, If you are really angry, you must retaliate, and you can't suffer any loss. He whispered, Your Majesty, you will be punished if you file a complaint. Emperor Jing was stunned and looked down at Suwon. Her eyes were very beautiful, with bright black pupils, like a deer in the forest, pure, kind and harmless. A truly innocent and harmless person would not be so bold as her in accusing her stepmother of treasonous crimes, nor would she remind him that he would be punished for complaining. She spends every penny and even beats the drowned dog. But they don't have the magnanimity of General Qi and Qi Min. Emperor Jing thought that Suwon could relieve the headache caused by the elixir, and said in a deep voice, Ms. Suli, anyone who complains to the emperor will be whipped 50 times. Kinglin was horrified, Your Majesty, my wife, The clever chamberlain covered her mouth and dragged her down. Suwon quickly thanked the emperor for his kindness, Your Majesty is wise. Emperor Jing raised his eyebrows, If I don't give you justice, will I be unwise? The emperor is a benevolent king, and he is fair in dealing with matters. He will never deny justice to his subjects, Suwon flattered her with ease. Emperor Jing felt relieved after hearing this, If your mother was half as transparent as you, she would not have died young. He showed his fatigue and waved his hand, Just step back. Suwon felt awestruck in her heart. Could there be a secret behind her mother's death? She absent-mindedly followed Eunuch Li out of the Yangzin hall. It's not a good thing to be sharp. Eunuch Li stood still and said meaningfully, You don't have to be too strong-willed. If you are too strong, you will be easily broken. Suwon's expression calmed down. Eunuch Li was trying to hit her. With a humble attitude, she said, Thank you, father-in-law, for your teaching. She asked tentatively, Is my mother a strong character? Eunuch Li smiled and said, Miss Qi has a straightforward temper and does not fall into the Qi family's style. Does it sound like I've lost the character of the Qi family? Suwon curled her lips, not very happy. Eunuch Li laughed happily and led her to the East Palace. When the people in the East Palace saw Eunuch Li, they did not dare to stop him. The dowry was successfully counted and brought back to Dingyuanhou Mansion. Those who do good things know the inside story and publicize it, and everyone praises Emperor Jing as a wise king. No one can accept a concubine who is a concubine, especially the royal family members and high-ranking ministers. For people like them who are of noble birth, if they bow down to a concubine who is a concubine, the future queen will be a great humiliation. Every status level is an insurmountable gap. Suwon returned home satisfied. Mon and Mo Chen's eyes changed when they saw the people in the palace carrying boxes of dowry to Suwan's yard. The mistress actually got back the dowry so smoothly and deposed Su Mingxiu as the crown princess. The two people looked at each other and both felt a sense of crisis. The crown princess is deposed, will the mistress and the crown prince? Mo Chen immediately slipped away and went to report the news to his master. Suwan didn't know that the two of them had thought it over and entrusted Mon with a heavy responsibility. You are responsible for transporting all the dowry to Xinghua village. All these dowries were brought back from the battlefield by General Qi, and Suwan planned to use the money to support the Qi family's army. Yes, Mon looked solemn. Suwan gave him a strange look and looked up in the direction of the Prince Regent's palace. The regent has great power, and all the disturbances in the palace cannot be hidden from his eyes and ears. He just lets things develop like this. Is this not showing favoritism to Su Mingxiu? Are you sincere in your kindness to her? Then why do you want to steal the original owner's marriage and make Su Mingxiu the crown princess? Could it be that he wanted to marry the prince and not push the prince to the throne? Suwan stopped her thoughts and couldn't let her subjective consciousness paralyze her judgment. Just wait and see. Regent's Palace. Your Majesty, the Emperor deposed the crown princess, demoted her to a good lady, and returned all the dowry to Miss Su. Luo Cheng added, together with the imperial edict. Give it to her if she wants it. The regent didn't care. Luo Cheng was stunned and said cautiously, the Emperor had a headache today, and Miss Su cured it with acupuncture. The regent's figure was immersed in the darkness, and his expression could not be discerned. Luo Cheng didn't wait for a reply for a long time, then he knew that the regent would not take action against Suwan, so he quietly left. Qinglan was carried back to the Dingyuan Marquis mansion while dying. She hated Suwan in her heart, and she was unwilling to give in. In order to save her life, she took out the imperial edict and asked Jiajuan to deliver it to Suwan. Suwan received the imperial edict and thought that the matter of coming to the capital was completed. It went unexpectedly smoothly and prepared to return to Xinghua village tomorrow. She brought her money and planned to go shopping to buy gifts for Gu's mother, Gu Beizu and Gu Jingyun, and then have a long chat with Mrsu in the evening. Suwan asked Xiao Tao and Mo Chen to go out together. Parked at the gate of the mansion was a carriage made of black cloth. Suddenly, the car curtains opened, revealing a clear and beautiful face, with a pair of dark eyes staring at her firmly. The author has something to say. Hey, who's coming? Ha 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 babies, the 6,000 word update is complete, good night, okay. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 107. Gu Huizi, Suwan ran towards the carriage in surprise and stood in front of the carriage window, as if in a dream. She put her hands on the edge of the window and leaned her head close. Why are you here? No, why didn't you say anything when you came? A sound. Gu Huizi stared at her smiling face as bright as the morning sun, her eyes as bright as stars. His slender fingers lifted the hair on her cheek and brushed it behind her ears. His movements were rare and gentle. I've finished the medicine. Gu Huizi stared at her for a moment, then raised the corners of his mouth slightly with a warm smile. You forgot to leave the prescription, so I came here to get it. Suwan was stunned for a moment and raised her eyebrows. You came to me specifically, right? Are you afraid that I won't go back? It was inconvenient to speak like this, so she jumped on the shaft and got into the carriage, seeing him looking at her leisurely. Suwan exposed him mercilessly. I prepared a month's worth of medicine for you before I came here. And I told Dr. Zhou that if I don't come back for a month, he will send you the follow-up medicine. Gu Huizi looked at her smug expression, as if he had discovered something extraordinary, and his thin lips slightly raised, as if sighing helplessly. Mom knew you were going back to the home mansion, so she ordered me to come. Gu Huizi paused for a moment, looked calmly in the direction of Dingyuan home mansion, and said slowly, She is worried that you will be bullied. Who can bully me? Didn't you hire 2 people to protect me? Suwon didn't delve into the meaning of his words, and said with a smile, I plan to go out to buy some things and bring them back to Xinghua village tomorrow. You're welcome to come. It's a coincidence that we met. If you were a little late, you would have missed it? Gu Huizi frowned slightly. Suwon opened the curtain and said to Xiao Tao and Mo Chen who were standing outside the carriage, you guys take the carriage at the back, let's go. She turned to Gu Huizi and asked, do you have a place to stay? Or are you staying in an inn? The smile on Gu Huizi's lips slowly faded away. Her black and white eyes were full of inquiry. She had no intention of taking him to meet his parents' family, let alone live in the home mansion. Subconsciously, she did not regard him as one of her own. Gu Huizi said a faint turned away from her, and his attitude suddenly became cold. Suwon noticed that someone was in a mood, narrowed her eyes, and directly told Xiao Tao, go to a nearby inn. He rushed to Beijing all night without eating or sleeping well. Now he went to see his grandmother and felt uncomfortable on an empty stomach. Ah! Oh, okay, Xiao Tao was stunned for a moment, her mind filled with questions. From the name the young lady called, it was obvious that the person coming was her uncle. Mistaking someone to stay at an inn? Don't you live in the home mansion? She wanted to ask, but Suwon had already lowered the curtain. Xiao Tao turned to look at Mo Chen. Mo Chen thought to himself that the mistress was indeed an accident, and the prince was his mistress's true love. All this goes to the door of my daughter-in-law's house, but I can't even get in. How pitiful. Suwon sat opposite Gu Huizi. Gu Huizi closed his eyes and leaned against the car wall, not looking at this terrible thing. Suwon did not explain, thinking about Gu Huizi's purpose in coming to the capital. Moun and Mo Chen's identities are not simple. They followed Gu Huizi's orders, which shows that Gu Huizi is not simple either. They were just forced to live together. If this man really came here for her, why didn't he come to Beijing together from the beginning? After thinking about it in confusion, the carriage stopped. Miss, the welcome guest has arrived at the inn, Xiao Tao's crisp voice sounded. Suwon jumped out of the carriage first and brought a wooden ladder for Gu Hui to get off the carriage. Gu Huizi lowered his eyes and glanced at the wooden ladder, then at Suwon who was smiling brightly. He was silent and walked out of the carriage. Uncle Xiao Tao called out cautiously. Gu Huizi raised his eyelids and glanced at her, saying casually. He looked at Suwon out of the corner of his eye and saw that she didn't show any disgust, so his expression softened slightly. Are you hungry after a long journey? Eat first. Suwon led Gu Huizi into the inn and asked for a private room. The two of them sat down in the private room, with Mo Chen and Xiao Tao guarding the door very discerningly. I got my dowry back, and the emperor deposed Su Mingxiu as crown princess. My stepmother suffered a little pain because of the complaint. Instead of me being punished, I ended up being beaten like a chicken. She must have wanted to tear me apart. Suwon briefly introduced the current situation. She really didn't realize that she wanted to take Gu Huizi to meet his parents before. After all, she felt from the bottom of her heart that the two of them would eventually part ways, and there was no need to involve him in the quagmire. But this man cared very much, and Suwon didn't want to make trouble over such a trivial matter. You fill your stomach first, and we will buy some gifts later. You come with me to see Grandma. Gu Huizi held the teacup with his knuckled hands and made a careless Okay, that's a bit pretentious. Suwon curled her lips and didn't mind making him happy. Grandma said today that she wanted me to take you to take a look at her. She held her chin in her hands, her eyes bright. I promised her. Gu Huizi's eyebrows relaxed and he coughed lightly. There's no need to buy any more gifts. Mom has already prepared them. After waiting for a while, Suwon made no movement. Gu Huizi raised his eyes and looked into her smiling eyes. He was stunned and could not help but feel a little smile on his face. After traveling day and night, Gu Huizi was in a state of fatigue and had a poor appetite. He reluctantly ate some, bought some things with Suwan, and took a carriage back to Dingyuan Marquis Mansion. Suwan asked, "How are Su Mingxiu and the prince?" The prince took in someone. "I heard that you are the miracle doctor," Lu Jun said. When he learned that you had returned to the capital, he and Su Mingxiu came to the capital. Gu Huizi looked at the girl sitting next to him, her arms with her slender legs next to his arms and legs. She tilted her head slightly and listened to him quietly. There was a rare tenderness between his eyebrows, and he said in a clear voice, "The matter has been resolved, let's go home early." Suwan responded meekly, "Okay." The carriage stopped, and Suwan and Gu Huizi got out of the carriage together. Mo Chen hugged the gift with a happy face. Xiao Tao was helping. When the doorman saw Gu Hui, he recognized him and called out with discernment, "Uncle." Gu Huizi nodded slightly and went to Fuxi Hall with Suwan with a calm expression. The maid at the door was stunned when she saw Suwan and Gu Huizi, not knowing how to call someone. "This is my uncle," Suwan introduced. The maids quickly saluted, "Miss, Uncle." Xiao Chao ran into the house and shouted, "Old madam, the eldest lady is here with her uncle." There was silence in the room. When Suwan and Gu Huizi stepped into the inner room, they felt the atmosphere was solemn. Su had already sat up. When she saw Gu Huizi, her eyes were kind. "Has Huizi arrived in the capital today? Sit down quickly and let grandma take a look." She then ordered the old nanny, "Go to the kitchen to prepare something. Give Huizi something to eat." "Grandma, Huizi has already eaten." Suwan looked serious and said calmly, "What happened in the house?" Su saw her grandson-in-law for the first time, and she didn't want to spoil the fun. However, seeing Suwan's expression that she couldn't tolerate any perfunctory treatment, she sighed, "Master Wyron is here and is treating your father. The author has something to say. Recommended by my friend Lu Xiaolis. The group's favorite koi sister is 5 years old. Introduction. The group's favorite, Vest, cute baby, high sweetness Shen Nian traveled through the 1980s and became a little girl with small breasts that everyone loved. With the koi buff and the blessing of good luck, he successfully captured the hearts of Shen's elders and 3 brothers, and was pampered into a cute little baby. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 108. Suwan's expression changed. The queen said that Master Wyron would not return to Beijing for a few days. She did not expect to return to Beijing so soon and have already treated Sujihong. Wan, Master Wyron has been here for a while. Su's face was filled with sadness. Even if she tried to stop him, it would be too late. Suwan knew what the old lady meant, but she just felt that something should come, and it would come. For example, Su Mingxiu's heroine Halo. She was demoted and lost her support. Sujihong was cured. Su Mingxiu had someone to rely on again. Just treat him. He is my father. If I don't treat him, I can't expect him to die. Although Suwan hoped that Sujihong would die soon, the matter was a foregone conclusion. She didn't want to continue to bring up this topic to ruin her happiness. "Grandma, I didn't think well before, so I didn't take Huaiji home with me. Instead, I gave him a bunch of trivial matters to hold him back. After he took care of it, he came to see you. Grandma, I would like to send you my regards, this Junior Gu Huizi." Gu Huizi saluted politely. Su supported Gu Huizi and said with a smile on her face, "Good boy, it's good if you have this heart. Harmony between you and your husband is my greatest wish. Gu Huizi made a promise, if you are willing to entrust Wan to me, I will definitely not let her down." Su said several good things in succession, then turned to Suwan and said, "Go and make Huizi a pot of tea." Suwan felt like she had a mirror in her heart. The old lady had something to say to Gu Huizi alone. She gave him a wish for goodness look and turned around and left the room. Only then did Mrsu look at Gu Huizi carefully. He had an extraordinary demeanor, not like an ordinary farmer's boy, but like a carefully cultivated child of an aristocratic family. She looked very satisfied, but her physical condition was not good enough. Wanwan has never suffered any hardship since she was born. She has clothes to put on, food to eat, and mouth to open. Her origin determines that her husband's family will be either rich or noble in the future, and she will enjoy all the glory and wealth in her life. I got married to you by accident, and I can't sleep or eat well. This child told me that you were very kind to her and lived a happy life. I was very happy that the person she married was a good match. It's just that in a family like ours, intrigues are inevitable. She was not loved by her father when she was a child. Now that she has a stepmother, her life is even more difficult. Wanwan gets her dowry back. Su Mingxiu is more or less deposed from the position of crown princess, so she is afraid that Kinglan will hate her. Now that Master Weiren has cured her father, he should help bully her. It's too difficult for you to live a stable life. I'm half buried in the ground, so I can't protect her for long. Mrsu's eyes were moist, and her withered hand held Gu Huizi's hand tightly, as if to support her. You study very well. You have talent, and now you are a scholar. The provincial examination will be held soon. You should take the imperial examination well, become an official, and become an official. Your relatives still have some connections in the court. They will protect you. When you become important in the court, these monsters will be gone. I can't bully you. Son, promise grandma. Mrsu was pleading in her eyes. Under the expectant eyes of the old lady, Gu Huizi solemnly said, I promise you. Mrsu smiled, her heart settled, and she said with a kind expression, Are you tired after traveling all the way to the capital? You go back to rest and refresh yourself. You go home early and don't stay in the capital for too long. Gu Huizi, you should also take a good rest and take good care of yourself. Mrsu nodded. She would try to live for a few more years until they were able to protect themselves. When Gu Huizi came out of the house, he saw Suwan squatting at the door. He walked over and stretched out his hand to her. Suwan was startled, tilted her head to look at his handsome and beautiful face, and put her hand in his palm. Gu Huizi grabbed her with a little force and pulled her up. What did grandma say? Suwan was curious. Gu Huizi said quietly, Let me not bully you. Suwan laughed out loud, wondering who was bullying whom. But it was very useful in my heart. She led Gu Huizi to Haitang residence. On the way, I met the people from Weirui Pavilion on a narrow road. Xiajuan sent Master Weiren out of the house respectfully, followed by the butler. Master Weiren led a young novice monk. Suwan's eyebrows moved and she wanted to step over. Master Weiren looked sideways, his compassionate eyes touching Suwan, and his sharp eyes seemed to see through her. Suwan stayed where he was. Master Weiren clasped his hands and left without stopping. What's wrong? Gu Huizi asked warmly. Suwan shook her head. I'm fine. Master Weiren's look made her soul tremble, and she felt like she was a lonely soul. Gu Huizi's eyes were fixed on her pale face, not missing what was wrong with Suwan just now. He stared at Master Weiren's leaving figure, a pair of narrow eyes like a deep pool, dark and opaque. Madam, the Marquis is awake, he's awake. Xiajuan's excited voice cut through Weirui Pavilion. Kinglan wanted to get out of bed and go over to visit Sujihong, but when her body moved, the pain from the wound made her face look hideous, and she gasped, Hurry up and carry me over. Xiajuan quickly ordered the rough lady to carry Kinglan over. Upon entering Sansazai, Kinglan was keenly aware that something was wrong with the atmosphere. She saw Sujihong with a slumped expression but suppressing his rage. She saw that he was grabbing the broken arm on his right hand with 5 fingers of his left hand, and the veins on the back of his hand were popping up. She knew that he could not accept this fact. Kinglin burst into tears. "Master Ho, you have to cheer up. Ever since you fell asleep, we, mother and daughter, have been bullied by Wan Wan. She spread the news that Shwe'er was a concubine, and Shwe'er's dowry was robbed by her. When you come back, the emperor will depose Shwe'er as the crown princess. Shwe'er and I only have you. If there is anything wrong with you, I won't be able to live anymore." Sujihong had been lying in bed for several months. His strong body had lost weight twice, stubble appeared on his chin, and he looked gloomy. Hearing Kinglin's cry, Sujihong looked up and saw her lying on the door panel, crying heartbrokenly and with a dull pain in her heart. "Lanur, don't cry. Since I survived the disaster, even if I am missing arms and legs, I can still protect you mother and daughters." Sujihong asked someone to put Kinglin on the bed and wiped away the tears on her cheeks with pity. "I only have Shwe'er as my legitimate daughter, and Suwan is a lowly bastard. If she dares to do this to Shwe'er, I will make her regret it." How could this happen? Kinglin was shocked. Because of his manly dignity, Sujihong did not tell Kinglin about this matter that was rotting in his stomach. Chi Min didn't really want to marry him. She agreed to get married because she thought he had someone he loved. On the wedding night, she proposed that the two of them be a couple in name only. She would help Ding Yuanho mansion return to the center of power. The only condition was that he sign the divorce letter and parted ways after a year. Sujihong hated Chi Min's condescending attitude, but he knew very well that the Su family was being marginalized in the court, and the Chi family had a large number of soldiers and was a powerful person that everyone wanted to cling to. He endured the humiliation and reached an agreement with her. 4 or 5 days after they got married, Chi Min disappeared for 2 days and came back. She was poisoned by love and was no longer conscious. When she went to find the antidote, she was shaking so badly that the medicine bottle rolled to the ground. Sujihong looked at her in unbearable pain. How could he be as cool and arrogant as usual? He walked over and picked up the medicine bottle, suddenly having a bad thought. The author has something to say. Babies, see you in the afternoon, okay? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 109. Chi Min's appearance is as beautiful as a warm rose, bright and unrestrained, free and heroic. Such a woman has a fatal charm for men. In particular, Chi Min treated Sujihong without any pretense, and was very noble and cool. It seemed that he did not take him into consideration and aroused his desire to conquer. He wanted to tear her arrogance to pieces and make her beg for mercy under his crotch. Sujihong changed the medicine, fed Chi Min to take it, and even poured her a glass of water. On the day of their wedding, Chi Min gave him a big gift to show his sincerity, but he only had 1 year to get benefits from the Chi family. 1 year is too short for him. If Chi Min can give birth to his child, what if Chi Min doesn't love him? She will be trapped by her child for the rest of her life, and the power of the Chi family will be used by him. Sujihong watched with cold eyes as Chi Min was tortured and lost her mind. When the time was right, he pinned her down. Chi Min stabbed him directly, her eyes were red and her aura was fierce. "Get out." Sujihong covered the wound on his abdomen and said angrily, "Chi Min, you are the wife of my Ming matchmaker. Even if I want you in front of your father, he can only make room for it. We are married, who will stop her? Chi Min has been tempered and killed on the battlefield, and her willpower is very strong. Even though the medicine paralyzes her mind, she still maintains a trace of sanity. Are you worthy of touching me?" Chi Min grabbed the dagger with his backhand and swung it away, the blade cutting close to his neck. Sujihong reacted quickly and leaned back to avoid it, only scratching a little flesh. There was severe pain in his thigh, and the dagger stabbed in at an angle. He was completely angered, lost his mind, and hit Chi Min's elbow hard. She was exhausted, the dagger fell to the ground with a clang, and she fainted. Sujihong gritted his teeth. The blood flowing from the wounds on his abdomen and legs dyed the material of his clothes red. Even if he wanted to do anything to Chi Min, he was powerless. Thinking of her words, "You are worthy enough to touch me," he sneered again and again. In a moment of evil, Bien Bien summoned a slave to kill her. Just thinking of her breaking down when she woke up and found herself being played by a humble servant, Sujihong felt happy. See how dare she despise him. After the wound was bandaged, the anger dissipated, and rationality returned. Sujihong regretted it. He needs to rely on the power of the Qi family and cannot break up with Qi Min. Qi Min was so abused by him that he would probably chop him into pieces. The servant did not dare to offend a young lady, but Sujihong threatened the lives of his family members, so he had no choice but to put the duck on the shelf. When Sujihong broke in, the matter was already done. The servant was afraid of retaliation from the Qi family, so he hung himself in the room with his belt. After he dealt with the aftermath, not only could he not confess, he could only admit that it was Qi Min who he had violated. As soon as the 1-year period came, they broke up and he got the power. Who slept with Qi Min and what did it have to do with him? Qi Min didn't have the slightest suspicion that the relationship between the two had dropped to a freezing point. Sujihong knew that Qi Min was secretly planning to deal with him. Just when he was worried, Qi Min became pregnant. Mrsu and General Qi were intervening in the middle, and Qi Min was arrogant for the sake of her children. Qi Min stopped helping him. Fortunately, General Qi wanted his daughter to be happy and secretly supported Sujihong, so he grabbed the Qi family and climbed up quickly. Suwan was born prematurely, only 8 months old. She weighed only 3 or 4 kilograms and was almost impossible to feed. Qi Minyi took good care of Suwan. She had a strong vitality and survived safely. Whenever Sujihong saw a moment of tenderness between mother and daughter, disgust and pleasure intertwined in his heart, and he even felt malicious and wanted to tell Qi Min the truth. But he couldn't. General Qi was about to retire, and Sujihong wanted to take over General Qi's military power, so not only could he not say anything, he also had to be kind to the mother and daughter. But Qi Min didn't think so. After Suwan's health improved, she proposed an agreement between the two of them and unilaterally informed him that she would leave Dingyuan Marquis Mansion at the end of the month. A few days later, Qi Min made an engagement between Suwan and the prince, but she died before the end of the month. Mrsu held Suwan under her knees. No matter how Sujihong tried to persuade her, she was unwilling to send him away. For this reason, he hinted to Mrsu that he and Qi Min were not married. Qi Min disappeared for 2 days after the wedding. No one knew who Suwan's biological father was. The position of the legitimate daughter of the home mansion cannot be called a bastard is taking over. Mrsu's attitude was surprisingly tough, even threatening her with death, and she became better and better towards Suwan. Sujihong suspected that Mrsu insisted on keeping Suwan because she didn't believe what he said, thinking that he said it deliberately just to free up Suwan's position as his legitimate daughter. Shuer is originally my daughter, and you are my matchmaker. She is not worthy of being the crown princess, and is Suwan worthy? Her father is just a domestic slave in the home mansion. Sujihong's eyes were full of sarcasm, and he held her with one hand. Kinglan, I didn't give her a servant, so she would be too high-spirited to marry anyone. Kinglan covered her mouth in shock. She really didn't expect that Suwan's life experience was so miserable. This little bitch still has the nerve to say that her daughter is an outcast. Qi Min, a bastard who gave birth to a child in a marriage with another man, will be thrown into a urine bucket and drowned. Master Marquis, you can't say things like this outside. My sister is dead. Rumors are spreading everywhere in our house now. It would be bad for you if Suwon's life experience is revealed again. Kinglan looked like she was planning for Sujihong. It made him feel pity for a while. A good girl will be a good girl. The prince has not yet ascended the throne, so everything is not settled yet. Kinglan wanted Sujihong's attitude. Seeing that he was completely biased toward her, she felt reassured. Especially since Suwon was not his child, Kinglan became even more fearless. Her eyes were like autumn water, and she said pitifully, "Imperial decree." Sujihong coaxed in a low voice, "I have everything." Kinglan saw that Sujihong didn't care about the imperial edict at all, so she knew that he had a plan in mind. Of course, Sujihong had a plan. The Taoist priest who refined the elixir for Emperor Jing fell into his hands. Emperor Jing listened to the words of the Taoist priest, and the Taoist priest was used by him. To a certain extent, he was able to control Emperor Jing. He had just woken up and was very weak. After talking for a while, he fell asleep again. It would not be too late for Suwon to wait until her body recovers completely before making arrangements. The housekeeper and Jiajuan came over. Kinglan asked, "Steward, what did Master Wyron say? Has Master Ho's poison been cured?" The housekeeper shook his head and said solemnly, "It's just to suppress the poison. If the antidote is not found within 2 years, the poison will develop and die." Kinglan's face turned pale and she was completely confused. After Gu Huizi came to Beijing, he left early and returned late for several days in a row. Suwon rarely met Gu Huizi. When Suwon got up from bed that day, she thought Gu Huizi had gone out. When he came out of the inner room, he saw Gu Huizi sitting on the soft couch, reading a book. Hearing the movement, he turned his head and looked over. "Hurry up and have breakfast. I will take you to a place later." Suwon raised an eyebrow and said, "Where are you going?" She sat down, picked up a dumpling with chopsticks and stuffed it into her mouth. Gu Huizi smiled and said nothing. Suwon pursed her lips and smiled. Today was her birthday. This man gave her a surprise. After breakfast, the two of them got into the carriage and headed outside the capital. Half an hour later, the carriage stopped at the foot of the mountain. Suwon opened the curtains and saw the towering peaks reaching into the clouds. The clouds and mist shrouded the temple like a veil, and faintly could hear the Sanskrit sounds echoing in the mountains. National Temple. She immediately thought that Master Wyron was in the National Temple. Gu Huizi didn't celebrate her birthday, but found out that she behaved strangely when facing Master Wyron that day, and brought her here to test it. The author has something to say. Suwon, where's the birthday surprise you promised? Smile, smile, smile. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 110. Gu Hui got out of the carriage and stood in front of the window. He saw her staring at the peak in trance. "What are you thinking about?" Suwon came back to her senses and looked at Gu Huizi inquiringly, as if she wanted to read something on his face. "Get off the car and go up the mountain early. You can eat peony lettuce and bean huang pickles." Gu Huizi lifted the curtain and stretched out his hand towards Suwon. Suwon was stunned. Taoist temple? Not going to the National Temple? She quickly got out of the carriage, put her hand on Gu Huizi's palm, and used his strength to jump off. "Aren't you going to the National Temple?" Gu Huizi asked back, "You don't want to go to the National Temple. I am a very narrow-minded person. Master Wyron cured my father, but he didn't give me a good look when he saw me that day. He is my master in name. If I go to the National Temple, I have to pay homage to him." Suwon spread her hands and said, "I do not want to go." "Then I won't go." Gu Huizi walked side by side with Suwon. Suwon interrogated him, "You seem to be very familiar with Taoist temples. Have you been here before?" "I've been here before," Gu Huizi said calmly. "I've been to many places to seek medical advice." Suwon tore off a piece of grass and walked in front of him. She asked curiously while walking backwards, have you ever been to Jiangnan? Isn't the scenery there beautiful? The mountains and rivers are beautiful and the climate is pleasant, Gu Huizi said with gentle eyes. Next March the catkins will be like smoke and the flowers will be in full bloom. I will take you to the south of the Yangtze River with me. Next year? Su Wan's heart moved. Did he take her on a trip specially? I'm afraid not. Su Wan saw that his smile had faded a little, and she said happily, you have the provincial examination in August, can you pass it? In the spring of next February, if you pass the general examination, you still have to take the palace examination, and wait for all the examinations. It's going to be March anyway. It's a long way from the capital to Jiangnan. If you are appointed to the Hanlin Academy, you won't be able to leave Beijing at will during your tenure. How will you have time to go to Jiangnan? Gu Huizi smiled, I'll go there when I have time. Later. Su Wan's eyes were clear and she turned away, let's talk about it later. Gu Huizi saw her light steps, wearing a silver-red dress, throwing herself into the forest and reappearing in the green, which was particularly eye-catching. Su Wan stood at a fork in the road. To the left was the Taoist temple halfway up the mountain, and to the back was the Chinese temple on the top of the mountain. In the middle is a tall stone tablet with a Go game in the middle. It is grey and dusty, as if it has experienced years of wind and frost, revealing a kind of vicissitudes. Su Wan observed carefully and found that this endgame was quite interesting. It happened to be the one solved by Grandpa and Grandpa, who did it here. Gu Huizi explained, the eldest princess's only son is talented and intelligent, obsessed with Go. When he was 7 years old, he rarely encountered an opponent. After he defeated Abbot Huiming, he led his disciples to practice and live deep in the national temple. This endgame was set up by him. If it comes out, if someone cracks it, he will go down the mountain. He turned to look at Su Wan and said meaningfully, the eldest princess has been waiting for the person who can crack the chess game. Su Wan understood that whoever breaks the rules is the eldest princess's benefactor. Can you break it? Su Wan picked up a chess piece and threw it in the palm of his hand. He had an inexplicable feeling that Gu Huizi must be able to break it. Gu Huiziun said calmly, no. He went straight to the left. Su Wan curled her lips, threw the chess pieces in her hand into the grid holes on the chessboard, and caught up with Gu Huizi. Su Mingxiu and her group happened to come down from the mountain. She looked very unhappy. On the way back to the capital, she heard that her position as crown princess had been deposed and her reputation was bad in the capital. Su Mingxiu got sick with anger and came directly to the national temple. Sent people to the capital to find out the news, and at least had a detailed understanding of the situation in the capital, so that it would be easier to deal with it after returning. Today, her condition has improved a lot. Su Mingxiu received a letter from her father and went down the mountain to go back to Su's house to discuss countermeasures. She glanced at the stone tablet subconsciously. This endgame was a hope, but also a despair. We know that if we crack it, we will gain huge rewards, but no one can crack it. Every time Su Mingxiu comes to Guo Temple, she has to try it several times. Her eyes glanced over, and suddenly, she looked over again, walked over involuntarily, and pointed her finger on the chessboard. Resolved. Su Mingxiu looked at the chessboard in shock and confirmed again and again that it was really solved. But no news came out that it was the person who solved the chess game. Don't you know the huge benefits hidden in this endgame? King Yu stared at the road to the Taoist temple and said uncertainly, Miss, I seem to have seen the eldest lady. She followed a man to the Taoist temple. Su Mingxiu's face was gloomy, looking at the empty mountain road, her eyes fell on the chessboard again, and suddenly she had an absurd idea that Su Wan had solved the chess game. She sneered. Su Wan didn't like playing chess. The two of them had played chess before, and Su Wan was not good at chess. Then, she thought of Gu Huizi again. He couldn't have untied it, could he? If so. Su Mingxiu's eyes flashed, and she felt that God was helping her. King Yu, who solved this chess game? King Yu was startled, but he immediately understood and said quickly, Miss, you are so amazing, you solved the chess game. The others heard this and congratulated without knowing what was going on. Su Mingxiu kept an eye on it and dug out the chess piece that could solve the endgame. If Su Wan didn't jump out and talk about the endgame, she would go to Xie Wei to solve it in front of him. Doesn't this count as taking away Su Wan's credit? Let's go. Su Mingxiu's eyes flashed that she was determined to win. After solving this mess, Xie Wei went down the mountain, and the eldest princess owed her a favor. Unaware of the follow-up development, Su Wan followed Gu Huizi to the Taoist temple. Several large characters carved on stone, Zhimiaogwen. The young Taoist priest saw the two people and stepped forward and asked, "Two laymen, are you here to have a vegetarian meal in the temple?" Exactly. Gu Huizi led Su Wan into the Taoist temple with ease. Su Wan followed the twists and turns and came to a fairy spring. Gu Huizi picked up a clean bamboo tube on the side, filled half of the water in the bamboo tube, and handed it to Su Wan. The spring water here is very sweet. Su Wan happened to be thirsty, so she took a sip. It was so refreshing and sweet that she couldn't help but take a few more sips. Gu Huizi took the bamboo tube. There was still a little water left in it. He poured it out, caught it with his palm, and flicked it on Su Wan's face. "Oh, what are you doing?" Su Wan wiped her face and glared at Gu Huizi. "Are you childish?" Gu Huizi smiled and said, "There is a legend that people who drink the water from the immortal spring can live a long life. Sprinkling water on the body can remove bad luck and bring good luck." Superstition. Su Wan muttered, snatched the bamboo tube from his hand, wetted her fingers with water, and flicked it on him. "Let the immortal bless you to win 3 yuan in a row." She handed the bamboo tube over. "You also have a few sips." Gu Huizi dusted his sleeves and said, "Only birthday stars work." "Su Wan, are you really here to celebrate her birthday?" Gu Huizi took her to the dining hall and met a Taoist priest approaching. He narrowed his eyes slightly and recognized this person as the Taoist priest who made elixirs for Emperor Zheng.